Want to quit playing Bee Swarm but still make hundreds of trillions of honey? Well, boy, do I have news for you. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to be giving you guys the best blue hive guide in Bee Swarm Simulator. And of course, we're going to be using MetaBee's guide for this video. Does that count as plagiarism? I mean, not really. If you technically think... Please don't sue me. Alright, here we go. Blue Hive Guide Step 1, the hive, which is where you're making like literally 99% of your honey. So of course, very first up on this list is you're going to need a couple of tadpole bees. How many tadpole bees might you need? You're gonna need 6 tadpole bees, and you might need to change these out later, but we'll get to that once we finish the rest of the hive. Also, my bad, I miscounted. We're actually gonna need 1 more tadpole bee. So a total of 7 tadpole bees. Now, of course, next we need buoyant bees for balloons. That way, whenever we boost, it looks like a 3-year-old's having a birthday party. We're actually gonna need 21 buoyant bees, by the way. So, and of course, since hatching those took so dang long, it's literally nighttime in Bee Swarm. But this isn't all 21 buoyant bees that we're gonna need. So we need to really quickly become human ammunition. And keep in mind, yes, you guys are going to need to have about 50 bees in order to correctly pull this off. So anyways, we currently have 18 points, so we're gonna need about 3 more, and that should about do it. Now, next up are a few of the less important bees, aka the legendary bees. Next up, we're going to need music bees because the melody token is extremely nice. So there's 1 music bee, there's 2, and we're going to need 1 more music bee up here. And then while we're at it, let's also hatch a diamond bee. Why do we need a diamond bee? Psh, I don't know. I'm not a blue hive master. It's not like my name is Bee Swarm Guide or anything. And then, of course, the last legendary bee we need is the ninja bee. And once again, I have no idea why we need this. It looks like a ninja turtle. All right, now since we're moving up the hive, we might as well hatch our event bees right now. And we're only gonna have a total of 5 event bees in this entire hive. So the first one is going to be the windy bee, because basically every single hive needs a windy bee. They're just straight up good, and the tornado ability is like kind of overpowered. Now next up, you're going to need a vicious bee, and psych, you thought we were hatching a vicious bee for this? Heck no. Blue hives are not for attack. Now, if you want attack, then you're gonna have to do it with this kitty cat, because we're hatching tabby bee for this hive. And in all seriousness, yes, you actually do need a tabby bee for a blue hive. And then, of course, we can't forget one of the most overpowered bees in the game, which is a digital bee. Of course, it's not actually overpowered unless you max out the drives, which is why my digital bee sucks. But moving on, next, we're gonna go full pay-to-win mode. And of course, every single good hive in Bee Swarm Simulator needs a bear bee egg. Gotta fill on its pockets with Robux. And then finally, we're going to use a gummy bee in this hive. I still don't know why you need one, but I guess you do. Hey, if this fails, sue MetaBee, not me. All right, now moving on to some of the epic bees that we're going to need. Now, we're actually going to need a commander bee if I can find the stupid egg. Okay, sweet. There we go. 1 commander bee. Then we are going to need a bucko bee. Very nice. Look at you. We are going to need a bubble bee, a frosty bee, and to top it all off, we'll need an exhausted bee. Oh, my bad. I meant shocked bee. Exhausted bee sucks. Don't hatch exhausted bee. Now, we are indeed beginning to run out of space up here. So, of course, we're going to hatch our last final bees and then move on to some of the most important parts of this guide, aka the amulets, because if you don't have good amulets, you're gonna suck at being a blue hive. And also bee quips too. But first, let's hatch our not so rare bees. Of course, we're going to need a looker bee. Oh yeah, one more thing I forgot to mention, we are going to need a fuzzy bee. But yes, next up, we're going to need a cool bee who is very much not cool. Then we're going to need a stubborn bee because the gifted version gives like 20% token lifespan, which is really good. We can't forget to get ourselves a bomber bee who most definitely does not commit war crimes. Let's see, we're gonna need one of the most useless bees in the game, which is a bumblebee, except it's actually not that useless because it gives 1.1 capacity, which for blue hives basically means like 1.1% pollen. And then finally, the OG of all bees, before we move on to the most overpowered parts of this guide, you're going to need a basic bee. Oh, and keep one thing in mind, all of these bees are completely useless if you don't make them gifted. Now, they don't have to be level 20. It'll take you a while before you get that, but as long as these bees are gifted. And rather than what you might think, you actually don't want to focus on getting your gifted mythics first. You want to focus on getting all of these other bees up here gifted, because if it's not gifted, then the stubborn bee is literally worthless, and then you can just slowly work your way down. Now, before we move on to the rest of the guide, there's one thing you got to keep in mind, and that's that this hive is not completely for everyone. This is just a base hive, so actually you're going to be making a lot of your honey from macro, so you can macro with this hive just fine. Oh yeah, and right before we cover all these overpowered amulets, we of course need to get bee quips out of the way. Now, I'm not going to take too long to explain this because it's extremely simple. I'm just gonna slap an image on screen. Here you go. These are the B-quips you're gonna need. You're just gonna need a snow tiara, paper angel, 3 beesmas hats, 2 pine cones, 3 beesmas tops, 3 elf caps, 3 icicles. Don't forget a charm bracelet, kazoo, sweatband, barrette, peppermint antennas, and a toy horn. They all have their own purposes. I forget what they are, but try and get them. All I know is that toy horn helps you get melody. Or maybe I could be wrong. Don't take my word for it. Now, next up for this guide, we have to take into account our amulets. Now, we're going to get to Supreme Star Amulet in a second because keep in mind, this is the most overpowered and important one to being a blue hive. If you don't have the Supreme Star Amulet, then don't be a blue hive because this amulet is everything to being blue. But of course, first we have to cover our cog amulet. Oh my gosh, who is this? I'm going to shoot you in the... Okay, so back to the Supreme Cog Amulet. Now, of course, this guide was made in 2022, so it doesn't actually have the Supreme Cog Amulet yet. So, I don't know. Just get blue pollen on your Supreme Cog Amulet and call it a day. There we go, 28% blue pollen. It's good enough. Okay, now I'm actually going to help you guys. Now, next up, we're going to need our King Beetle Amulet. And what you're going to want on this King Beetle Amulet is convert rate, preferably close enough to 100%. And then you're just going to want 1 bee attack. Not 1 red bee attack, 1 bee attack. But blue bee attack works just fine. And then for the fields on the amulet, you just want to try and get blue fields. Next up is our moon amulet. Of course, you're going to want to have 250,000 capacity on your moon amulet. Then you're just going to want honey per pollen and bond from treats, which as you can see, I actually have that right here. So this is actually a really good amulet. Next up is our stick bug amulet, which might be a little hard to get because blue hives don't have too much attack. But you're going to want capacity anywhere from 200,000 to 300,000, preferably around 300,000. Then you're going to want convert rate, blue pollen, and last of all, you're going to want some bomb pollen. Then next up, we have our Supreme Shell Amulet, which might take a while to get because gosh, Stump Snail is freaking annoying. But on your Supreme Shell Amulet, you're going to want convert amount, you're going to want goo, pollen, and then stump field pollen. And then all the other fields don't matter because I don't think any of them are actually blue. So just make sure you get really high stump pollen. Then right before we go on to that golden star amulet, you guys are going to need a good ant amulet. Now there's a lot of crazy factors on this one, but basically you're going to want blue pollen, convert rate, critical chance, critical power, and then you're going to get one more type of pollen. Like your amulet is going to have blue pollen, but then it's also going to have some other type of pollen. It doesn't matter if you get red or white pollen. It's honestly just your preference. Now moving on to the Supreme Star Amulet, which is literally what your entire hive is going to be based on. And also keep in mind, right after I show you guys the Star Amulet, I'm actually going to be showing you guys how to boost. So be sure to stick around for that. But first of all, we have to get through this heck of a Supreme Star Amulet. So before we get on to the passives and the double passives and all that stuff, we're just going to stick with the base stats. Now you're going to want the capacity, which is 2.5. You don't have any control over that. 2.5 capacity comes with every single Supreme Star Amulet. But then next up, you're going to want blue pollen, convert rate, bee ability rate, critical chance, and straight up pollen. And then moving on to the double passives. Now there's 2 different type of passives you can do. You can do Pop Star and Star Shower or Pop Star and Guiding Star. Preferably, I would say you guys choose Pop Star and Star Shower. So now I just gotta really quickly make one. There we go. Star Shower and Pop Star. Pretty dang nice. Now, if you're too poor to get a double passive, which is honestly really understandable, because at the stage where you first make your Supreme Star Amulet, you probably don't have enough. So if you don't have enough for 2, you just want to get a Pop Star in your amulet. But once you have enough for 2, make sure you go for Pop Star and Star Shower. Pop Shower is just really nice because it helps fill up those balloons that are going to be making you so much gosh dang on. Now on to the actual boosting stage of being a blue hive. And before I move on to boosting, I'm just going to very obviously say, yes, of course you need to have Diamond Mask. And yes, you're going to need Tide Popper. If you don't have Tide Popper, don't worry about it. The Petal Wand will work just fine. But please, when you can, don't forget to buy the Tide Popper. These things are a given. Come on. Now on to the boosting, which is one of the most important parts. Because obviously you need to know how to use this hive. Now obviously you're going to need your nectars. There are certain priorities. At the very top, you're always going to want to have motivating nectar. Then you're going to want comforting, satisfying, refreshing nectar, and then invigorating nectar. That's your list of priorities. So motivating nectar, always at the top. You want to have that. Invigorating nectar, you don't really need it, but it is very nice to have. Just don't make it a priority. Now when it comes on to boosting, there are 3 different types of boosting you can do. You can do like an extremely chill, cost-efficient boost. Then you can do casual boosting, and then you can do like actual good boosting, like you do on Honey Day. Now for the very easiest boosting, you basically just use blue extract. You can use field dye. That way you get a boost in your preferred field, and then a glitter just to make it even better, and then the free field boosters to help you out. Very, very simple. Next up is the casual boosting stage, which requires just a bit more. This time you're going to actually want to use an item like a purple potion. Then you're going to want to use smooth dice, so that way you can get a bigger buff. Then of course glitters and field boosters, and if you want, you can try and get some wins, anywhere from 1 to 7x. And then moving on to the intense boost materials, you're going to want to use super smoothies, loaded dice, that way you get as big of a buff as you possibly can. You're going to want to make sure you have your bubble bloat completely stacked up and ready, so you're going to have to do some pre-boost prep. And if you had Tide Popper, you want to make sure you get your Tide Blessing up too, and don't forget to use the sticker stack. Then of course you're going to want field wins, of course preferably above 8 times, and you're going to want to use your balloons in these boosts, and preferably save your black balloons for like the most important boosts, like, you know, your honey day boosts and stuff, so don't go wasting those. Mid boost, you're going to want to go back to your hive and convert your balloon, because the balloon does deflate. Of course, everything about blue hives is all reliant completely on the balloons, so you want to make sure you fill them up as much as possible, and that's also how you're going to be making basically all of your honey when you macro. You're going to want to macro in pine, because that's usually where everyone macros. And one thing I gotta say about macro is when you macro with other blue hives, gosh, does it boost your honey. Also keep in mind, you're going to want at least a level 18 hive for this to be the most efficient, so definitely just keep macroing until you have the honey to reach level 18. I want to try and hit 75,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you guys want to help me out, it'd really mean a lot to me if we could hit 53,000 subscribers in the next 2 days. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this blue hive guide. Here's a guide on how to set up macro. I'll put it on screen right now, and I will see you all in the next video.